Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. It's the post-game pod from an absolutely epic collapse for the Timberwolves. What happened? Losing a 24-point fourth quarter lead to the Bucks. We'll break down the devastation next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, man, this was rough. This was rough. The Timberwolves lost to the Bucks. A lot to break down in the post-game pod. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of the show. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Happy Hump Day. A not so happy Wednesday, really, after Tuesday's collapse. We'll talk all about what happened against the Bucks. And I don't know. They're up 24 early in the fourth quarter. You don't think this is the conversation you're going to be having on the podcast. Basically everything that could go wrong went wrong for the Wolves, and we're going to break it all down today. We're going to talk individual performances. We'll talk coaching decisions and non-decisions. We'll talk offensive stagnation, and also, some things that went right early in the game that they completely undone, or it got completely undone down the stretch. So a lot to get into today. A big thank you off the top for making this show your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And a reminder, you can subscribe to the daily newsletter at lockedondaily.com. It's one stop for Ultimate Wolves and NBA coverage. There's some great national writers that drop into the newsletter a couple times a week. And of course, you'll get my notes. Typically, it's about whatever the first segment, the big topic is from the show. I'll write a bit about it for the newsletter. You'll get that in your inbox midday most days, or I should say, every day, Monday through Friday, typically around midday. So be sure to subscribe over at lockedondaily.com. You'll get that in your inbox each day this week. All right. Where to begin? Well, I will say that over the course of this game, Wolves-Bucks on Tuesday night, I keep notes as I do, and I expected to be talking about, I'll tell you what I expected to talk about. I expected to talk about Anthony Edwards attacking offensively early in the game, having that look in his eye, the bounce in his step, looking like he's ready to go. Wanted to talk about the Timberwolves' defensive tenacity. I thought it was there early. I thought they looked like they wanted to be there. I thought they were playing hard. I thought that they responded to some dead stretches fairly well. End of the first, early second quarter, again, early third quarter, a couple stretches where the ball movement stopped offensively. And the Bucks early in the game, it was like a 12-point game that got down to like 6, I think. The Wolves pushed it back up. They were up 11 at halftime. Early in the third quarter, I think it got down to, 6 or 7 or 8 or something like that. And then the Wolves pushed all the way back and built it up to 20 by the end of the third quarter, which then became 24 early in the fourth quarter. And so they responded to these punches that the Bucks were throwing, figuratively speaking, of course. And it kind of had everything. Like the Wolves were doing the right things. The bench played great in the third quarter. We saw Dante and Naz. We'll talk more about those guys. They played very well. And those are all the things I thought we were going to talk about. Instead, the headline is the 24-point fourth quarter collapse. It's the 26-2 run that the Bucks went on from about 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter to 3 minutes left. And 26-2 is quite the run. You could just look at the fourth quarter. The Wolves lost the fourth quarter 40-13. Minnesota shot 4 of 18. 4 of 18 from the field in the fourth. I think they were 2 of 10 from outside the arc. Which, by the way, more than half their shot attempts in the fourth quarter came from outside the arc, which in a game that you're trying to hang on to and you're trying to run out the clock / hold serve with your lead at the very least, ideally grow it, you shouldn't be jacking threes. You should be attacking the rim, trying to get to the free throw line, trying to get all the way to the basket, moving the basketball, looking for the open shot. Instead, we were treated to hero ball shots, Anthony come back in until midway through the fourth. So it wasn't just Ant. It was also Naz. There was a little bit of Julius didn't necessarily jack threes, but there were some bad turnovers from Julius Randle. I think he had 5 or 6 on the night. 5 turnovers for Julius Randle. So there were a number of things that went wrong in terms of the offense, but the lack of attacking the rim late was a problem. I mean, for the game, Minnesota had 9 free throw attempts. 9 free throw attempts for Minnesota. Milwaukee shot 25 free throws. Yeah, they have Giannis. Giannis shot 11 of the 25, but guess what? Kevin Porter Jr. off the bench had 9 free throw attempts for the Bucks in this game in 25 minutes because Kevin Porter was attacking the basket. Kevin Porter was being aggressive. We saw Ant do that early. And again, I was geared up to talk about his shot selection and how I thought he did a good job. Now, there were maybe a couple too many mid-range shots early from Ant specifically, but overall, he had the aggressive attacking mindset. He didn't really start to jack threes. There was one after he shot 3 or 4 twos in the first quarter. He was like, I deserve to shoot a 3. That was clearly what happened. But in the fourth, that was the answer. It was like, hey, let me just shoot more threes. And I'm not a get off my own 3-point guy. If you're listening to the show for the first time, that's not at all what's going on here. This was just Ant attempting 11 threes, only making 2. And down the stretch, Minnesota's offense barely touching the paint, rarely getting to the free throw line. And that's how Milwaukee did it. And Milwaukee closed this game the way the Wolves tried to start it. I actually have in my notes that the Wolves, I think I used the word tenacity when I was taking notes. Yeah, good start, tenacity, playing hard. That's what we saw early in this game. Timberwolves were flying around. I thought they were active. And then it just kind of went away. And the Bucks closed this game by doing exactly that. I mean, they did this with a bench lineup plus Giannis. Like, it was basically Giannis, Bobby Portis in his first game back after a 25-game suspension, Kevin Porter Jr., Gary Trent was on the floor for a lot of it. AJ Green was on the floor for some of it. Hit a nutso 3 from the arena logo on the left side of the floor that like kind of felt like the backbreaking moment, even though I think at the time it was still like a 6 or 7 point game. Like, all those guys off the bench were plus double figures for Milwaukee, and Giannis was great. But the rest of the starting lineup was not part of this surge in the fourth quarter for Milwaukee. This was bench plus Giannis. And for the Wolves, it was pretty much the starters. Conley got taken off the floor. At one point, Rudy got taken off the floor. And we'll talk a bit more about the rotation. But it was about energy. It was about ball movement. It was about flow. All things the Wolves had early in the game and did not have late. And if you go back and watch this game, the ball movement, like, Ant was not the only problem in this game. I want to be very clear about this. Remember, he rests at the start of the fourth quarter, and this kind of avalanche started with Ant off the floor. But when Ant came in, it only got worse because of the lack of ball movement. And Ant is not, I don't want to overblow that. I'm talking about this game specifically. We've seen stretches where Ant gets a little too shot happy at times. Sure. I didn't feel like that was necessarily the case this game. The ball's just in his hands so much. He still had 4 assists and only 2 turnovers. But 25 points on 27 shots is not what you want to see. And only 3 free throw attempts. The ball in this particular game moved better when Ant was not on the floor. And early, when the offense did struggle a little bit for stretches early in the game, I thought it was more about just missing open shots. I mean, this side of Dante DiVincenzo, nobody really shot the ball well in this game. Nas was fine, but and then late, it was just the actual process. It wasn't simply the shot making. I said this on the postcast that I hosted with Andrew Dukowitz last night. The early in the game, the process was okay. The results weren't always there, which is why it was a 5-point game at the end of the first quarter instead of a 10-point game, an 11-point game at halftime instead of a 15, 17, 18-point game. But late in the game, it was both. It was the process, it was the execution, and then ultimately it was the lack of shot making, period. I want to talk about a couple of other categories in this game. We'll talk about the rotation, the coaching. We'll do individual studs and duds. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is sponsored by BetterHelp. Taking care of your mental health is just as important as taking care of your physical health, but traditional in-person therapy can be expensive, often ranging from $100 to $250 per session, and that's where BetterHelp comes in. With online therapy, you can get quality care at a price that makes sense, saving you time and money. Therapy isn't just for life's toughest moments either. It can help with everyday stress, learning how to set boundaries, or developing positive coping skills. Having access to support when you need it can make a big difference. There's plenty of things that can go sideways. And again, it's not always the big things. Sometimes it's the seemingly mundane things, the day-to-day stuff that can really kind of put you in a tough spot. And that's why something like BetterHelp is an absolutely fantastic tool to explore. Your well-being is worth it. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, H-E-L-P, BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right. Let's talk a little bit about a couple other categories. So overall in this game, like turnovers don't stick out, right? Minnesota had 13, the Bucks had 11. Fine, right? Like some games, it's a much bigger issue for Minnesota. I was a little bit concerned about it coming into this one because the Bucks can turn you over. They have Giannis. And ultimately, it ended up being a 2-point difference. I guess if you look at total team turnovers, Minnesota had 14, the Bucks had 12. But it was when they happened, the Timberwolves built this big lead in part because of Bucks turnovers, although again, not egregious for either team. But then late in the game, it was an Ant turnover that was really bad, a couple of bad Julius Randle turnovers. There was a bad DiVincenzo, I think, turnover mixed in there. Just not a good close to the game from a taking care of the basketball standpoint, and the timing of those mistakes were massive. Milwaukee ended up with 16 fast break points, and they scored 19 points off of 14 Minnesota turnovers. Minnesota only had 13 points off of 12 Milwaukee turnovers. So Milwaukee did a better job of scoring off of turnovers. They did a better job of scoring in transition in this game. And Giannis helped them do a better job of scoring in the paint. Again, like not a ton of blocks either, a total of 5 blocks between the two teams. But Giannis controlled the paint in a more impactful way than Rudy and the Timberwolves bigs did on the flip side, on the other side of the floor. If you just go down the box score, everything looks fairly even except free throw shooting. I mean, each team was plus or minus within a percentage point, 3-point shooting. They're within 1.5% overall, just raw field goal percentage. Rebounds, Minnesota was just down 1 in the rebounding category, down 2 in assists. Total, if you look at stocks, they were only down 3, only 2 more turnovers, marginal differences. But the free throw shooting is what stands out. Milwaukee had 25 free throw attempts, made 18 of them. Not a great percentage because Giannis was 4 of 11. Minnesota was 8 of 9. So Milwaukee took 16 more free throws and made 10 more than Minnesota in a 7-point win. It was that, and it was the turnovers and the timeliness. And then also Milwaukee getting hot from 3 late when the Wolves went absolutely cold from 3. Put it all together, and it ends up being a 7-point Milwaukee win, right? They counted the same in the first half as they did in the second. It's just the way the game unfolded and who, down the stretch, who made the shots. Rotation-wise, Chris Finch, it's like I talked about this a little on the postcast, and please go listen to that. Again, we do the postcast live after every game. I'm actually hosting 3 postcasts this week, last night, Thursday night, and Friday night. So check it out live on Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube, and then it's the last episode in your audio feed if you're listening to Locked On Wolves. I talked about this a bit on the postcast. Coaching, it's so hard to and I realize we're talking about this in the wake of the Michael Malone firing, which is just bonkers. And we're not long after the Taylor Jenkins firing. And you go back a little bit further and see some of these coaches that have been relieved of duties this season. And prior to this season, that just seems kind of nuts when it happens. And in a vacuum before this season, yeah, I would have said Michael Malone's a better coach than Chris Finch. Do I think Michael Malone deserved to be fired? No. Do I think Chris Finch deserves to be fired? No. Chris Finch is a really good coach. There's so many more things that go into this than they didn't run enough sets. It's not quite that simple. Should the Wolves have more discipline and actually execute the sets that are called in a better way? Yes. Is that at least in part reflective of the coaching? Yes. The coach is responsible for their players' actions on the floor. And if plays are being called and they're not being run, then there's an accountability issue. But I don't think we've ever heard that Anthony Edwards struggles to be held accountable by Chris Finch. We've only heard the opposite, that Chris Finch does hold Ant accountable. But how do you hold your star accountable? Is it calling him out in film sessions? Is it benching him? Should he have benched Ant in the fourth quarter? No. But when you're out there playing and your 23-year-old superstar jacks up a terrible shot, what do you do? That's a film session. You're addressing that at a film session. You're not pulling them out of the game. To me, and I don't want to turn this entirely into, we could maybe have the Finch conversation tomorrow. If I don't know, maybe I'll do this on Thursday's show. I don't know. Feels more like an off-season thing, but I say that, and I guess both. I forgot the Grizzlies. I mean, both the Grizzlies and no, I mentioned the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies and the Nuggets just fired their coaches in the middle of seasons where the team's going to go to the playoffs, right before the playoffs. So who knows? I don't mean that. They're not going to fire Chris Finch. The I lost my train of thought on that specific thought, but the coaching, like, there's only so much down the stretch, right? Like, that you could do in each of these individual games. And at some point, yeah, the team, that's what it was. The overall development of players, like, we're not going to argue. I don't think you can argue that young players haven't developed under Chris Finch. Anthony Edwards has gotten better every year under Chris Finch. Remember, Chris Finch was hired midway through Ant's rookie season. So, like, that's not the argument here. If you want to argue about in-game rotation, sure, there's been some rough patches. Timeout management, I think he's improved dramatically. In this particular game, I think the only thing you can really knock is down the stretch, some of the, like, oh shoot, we should put Dante back in the game. And Dante finally goes back in the game. Let's get Conley out. Let's get Rudy Gobert off the floor because we're not scoring. And then, you're just allowing free layups to Milwaukee when you take Gobert out. Like, I think that could have been managed a little bit differently. I think DiVincenzo, and he's the best player on the floor for the Wolves, 24 points on 15 shots in 28 minutes. Have to find a way to have him on the floor a little bit more. The third quarter group that pushed this lead was the three guys off the bench. It was Naz, it was DiVincenzo, it was Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and then it was Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert, right? The duo from Utah and the big three off the big bench three, right? Like, we talked about this all season before the first time when Dante was added to the starting lineup, and then there were injuries and everything. But go back and look at that three-man. That three-man is so good, those three bench guys together. And this was a game Nickeil only played 15 minutes, and he was kind of up and down. But DiVincenzo and Naz Reid were both really good, especially in that third quarter. And I thought the decision to roll with that lineup was super smart from Chris Finch. But then in the fourth quarter, like, Julius Randle played the second most minutes on the team in this game. He had a bad game. Julius Randle had 9, 7, and 6, but he had 5 turnovers. He shot 3 of 8, 9 points on 8 shots and 5 turnovers. And a -16 is not what you need from the guy that's supposed to be your number 2 offensive option. You're one of your veteran leaders. It's just not, like, this is the sort of thing that, like, gets you mentioned on a national podcast as stylistically the toughest guy in the league to watch, which I think is a little aggressive, but that happened this week, right? Like, Julius had a rough game, and he hasn't been good in the playoffs in his career. I'm not, like, turning this into a, look out for next week what happens with Julius Randle in the playoffs necessarily, but this was not a good game for Julius Randle. And I thought, like, hey, maybe you go Naz Rudy down the stretch. Maybe you take Rudy off the floor and you just leave Naz, and yeah, you're not stopping the Bucks, but they're making a ton of threes anyway. Mostly they're getting to the line a little bit, but you're not scoring anyway. So I think rotation-wise, yeah, there could have been tweaks, but I'm not going to sit here and rake Chris Finch over the coals because he's not the guy that proactively gave up. I think proactively is the right word here. I know it doesn't sound like it is, but the Wolves just handed a 24-point lead over. They just gave it up and somehow lost by 7. I'll go back to what I started with. A 26-2 run for Milwaukee in the middle 7 minutes of the fourth quarter, from the 10-minute mark to the 3-minute mark, a 26-2 run. And overall in the fourth quarter, a 40-13 margin for the Bucks. It has to be a comedy of errors, a cavalcade of issues that brings about a run like this against the Wolves. And that's what happened. It was, I said this on the postcast too. It really was a microcosm of the season, like 3 quarters of a bit of a roller coaster, but the body of work was really good. If you could describe the season in one quick phrase, wouldn't it be that? A bit of a roller coaster, but the body of work is good, yet disappointing. I thought, I guess being up 20 going into the fourth quarter, it's hard to call that disappointing, but there were stretches of poor play in the first 3 quarters, but overall it was great. Some great Ant moments, some really good bench moments, good stuff, right? And then in the fourth quarter, everything that can go wrong does go wrong. questionable rotation decisions, very questionable shot selection, lackadaisical defense. And here we are sitting here looking at a Timberwolves loss. All right. Let's close with studs and duds. We'll peek at everything else that's happening in the Western Conference. Scoreboard watching, not as fun after this one. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is sponsored by Robinhood Gold. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on the retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%. Plus, you also get 4% APY on your cash and non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk, rate subject to change. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 per month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account interest rate claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18th, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. All right, let's talk studs and duds. Pretty easy to pull these together for this game. The best player on the floor for Minnesota, hands down, was Dante DiVincenzo. I thought he was solid defensively. I thought he played hard. Yes, he had a bad turnover down the stretch, whatever, like everybody else did too, basically. So Dante had 24 points on 9 of 15 shooting, was a flamethrower in the third quarter, 6 of 10 outside the arc, hit just a crazy deep corner three in the left side, had a couple of deep threes, pull-ups in transition. 3 rebounds, 2 assists in this game. He did have the 3 turnovers, but Dante was great and deserved to play more than the 28 minutes. He was really, really good. Naz Reid's going to be a stud. Lack of options in this game. Naz was really good until the first part of the fourth quarter. I thought he was part of the problem when it came to stagnant offense and chucking from outside the arc. But 17 points on 12 shots, 3 of 7 on threes, 4 boards, 3 assists, and a steal, and 0 turnovers for Naz Reid. In a game they lost by 7, both Naz and Dante were +7s in the plus-minus column. I thought it was a fine performance from Naz Reid overall. Hard to find a third stud. If it wasn't for the collapse in the fourth quarter, which is an absurd statement because that's all we really should be talking about. But Ant, as I said off the top, I was prepared to talk about his process being really solid for the first few 3-ish quarters of the game. 25 points on 10 of 27 is not going to cut it. 2 of 11 outside the arc will not cut it. 7 boards, 4 assists, a steal, and a block. Only 2 turnovers is fine. It was the just lack of shot making early, and then the decision making and the lack of shot making late. So I'm only going to go 2 studs in this game. Ant's not a dud because he did a lot to help the Wolves build this lead, and again, the process was solid. Just not Ant's night. Duds, Julius Randle. 9 points on 3 of 8. 5 turnovers. I don't care about the 6 assists. The turnovers were costly, especially late. I guess that's it. I don't know that I would really say anybody else. Nikhil only played 16 minutes. Like, he wasn't great, but it wasn't awful. Kind of the same with Mike Conley at 3 assists, no turnovers, was a -22. Usually he's more beneficial to the flow of the offense, to the actual ball movement. I didn't necessarily feel that was the case in this game. I thought he played better than a -22. That number surprised me in the box score, but not a banner Mike Conley game. And then Rudy Gobert, only 6 points, 9 rebounds. I did a whole show yesterday, basically, on just how impressive Rudy Gobert has been of late for Minnesota. And then he turns in a pretty big clunker. And his teammates are somewhat culpable for not getting him the ball, but like I talked about yesterday, Gobert, just as he deserves some credit for making himself available and getting some of those passes, he deserves some blame when he gets up 4 shots in 34 minutes. And one of those was an offensive putback in the first half. He had 2 offensive rebounds. That was one of them. He wasn't active enough on the offensive glass either. That was an area I thought the Wolves could eat against the Bucks. And they got out offensive rebounded 11-10 in this game. So I'm only going to give Julius Randle a dud, but Rudy, Conley, McDaniels was quiet for most of the game, had a little bit of a better game as it turned out than I thought he would. And then Nikhil was quiet as well. Jalen Clark only played 4 minutes. This was an 8-man rotation with 4 minutes to Jalen Clark, who had 1 assist, and then he fouled the 3-point shooter, and that was it for Jalen Clark in this one. That's all. I don't want to say anything else about this game. It's pretty frustrating. And now, best case scenario, the Wolves win their last 3. They finished with 49 wins. You look at the standings in the West, and Golden State, as I'm recording this, is about to win over Phoenix. So Golden State will be a full game ahead of Minnesota. As I record this, the Clippers are up 7 on the Spurs in the third quarter. Check that. They're up 9 on the Spurs in the fourth quarter. Very likely that the Clippers win. The Grizzlies have already won on Tuesday night, which means all 4 teams were in action, and very likely Memphis, the Clippers, and Golden State will all win, and the Timberwolves will lose, which means the Wolves will be alone in the 8th spot in the Western Conference. Of course, they face Memphis Thursday. If they beat Memphis, they'll be tied, but remember, they lose the head-to-head tiebreaker if it's just Minnesota and the Grizzlies. And then we look to the Clippers and Warriors and what they're going to be up to. This was a tough one. They easily could have held serve. They should have held serve. And glancing at the upcoming schedules, the Clippers have Houston actually tomorrow on the second night of a back-to-back. That's tough for the Clippers. Then at Sacramento and at Golden State is a tough way to end the season for LA, for the Clippers. Golden State also plays a back-to-back, but they have San Antonio at home tomorrow and then at Portland and home for LA. So the Wolves have the easiest schedule still of those remaining teams. Of course, Minnesota has Memphis Thursday. So if they win against Memphis, there's a pretty good shot they're back in a tie. And they've still got a chance at getting up to 6. That's obviously the big one. They got to beat Memphis on Thursday. They just have to. Otherwise, we're talking play-in. And there's almost no two ways about it at that point. And it's just going to be a matter of, if you want home court, you want to get 7th, right? Not ideal. And just a bad game to kick away when it's all said and done. All right, tomorrow, I don't know, we'll dig in perhaps on the Finch stuff. I think I want to talk some lineup things as we head toward the playoffs, because if the rotation is really going to be 8 guys, what's the best way for Chris Finch to maximize it? We'll do that a little bit. We'll preview the Grizzlies game. We haven't seen Memphis in a while. And Minnesota's lost twice, but 2 close games to the Grizzlies. They've done a good job guarding John Morant this year. I want to dig into that a little and discuss that matchup on Thursday's show as well. And then as a reminder, I'll be hosting the live postcast Thursday night. Jack Borman was under the weather and not available Tuesday. I would expect him to be back Thursday. So I'll either have Jack or I'll have Andrew Dukowitz from Zone Coverage on the show on Thursday. And we'll go live on Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube following Wolves Grizzlies. And then that audio will be posted here to this Locked On Wolves feed as well. Big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on Roku and Amazon at Fire TV. And you can subscribe to Locked On Wolves Daily newsletter Monday through Friday. You can sign up at lockedondaily.com. You'll get the newsletter to your inbox for ultimate Wolves and NBA coverage every day, Monday through Friday. Again, that's at lockedondaily.com. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.